Hey Sean,
Hello.
how's it going?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Great. Well, Happy New Year.
I know. Happy 2023. I think this is my first podcast recording of 2023. So,
Ha-
so exciting.
How many do you do in a year? Like 100?
No. So it's funny. I have a spreadsheet that I have yet to go through, but I think this year it's going to be less than last year, which is good. I've been making intros to people, but it's funny because, creators like the hosts
Yeah.
slice it up into like a bunch of different assets, which is great. And then I go comment on all of it. So it's like, man, I see you in my feed all the time. Are you doing like 100 things? And I'm like, no, I think it was only like 20, which is still a lot, but
Oh man. And on like every channel too. It's like TikTok chopped up. You've got like YouTube
yeah,
Shorts, Instagram Reels. It's like you're everywhere. I mean, that's
I
just good
know.
marketing though, you know? It's like everywhere you
Yeah.
look, it's like the brand.
I
So
know,
yeah.
but it's funny because like I'm not actually on TikTok. I'm lazy about Instagram. Like I post cakes on Instagram. So it's so funny because I'm like, it's I mean, it's good marketing. It's like
Yeah.
join other what other people are building, and you don't have to always build your own thing. Like
Yeah.
go build your one thing that you're really good at and let that attract the right people. And then they spread your message for you. So it's super interesting. But
Yeah.
yeah, how's everything been? Like is your calendar booked with interviews and stuff?
Well, the podcast is really just like it started off as just a labor of love. Like it was just fun. And I just
Yeah.
love talking to people and like
Yeah.
hearing. Yeah, I feel like you just learn so much quicker
Yeah.
if you could go like straight to an expert in a subject. And it's like instead of reading books and pouring through blog posts. And
Yeah.
at some point you get through I've been on the internet since forever. And so at some point you're just like, I need a new way to like get information. And then I was playing around with all the different media formats, and the video thing, like video podcasts, seems interesting because we're getting all of our AI data. So like in the far future, all the AI bots will just scrape our video feeds and create 3D models of ourselves. And
I
so this
know.
might not actually be us. We
Right?
might be copies of ourselves right now. We don't
We
know.
might be deep fakes right now.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, it's just been fun. And then but yeah, the new year has been like insane already. Like I That's my question for you. Like, did you get any rest over the break, or was it straight through the holidays? And how have you found it?
Yeah, so I did take 2 weeks off, which was good. I'm actually down in La Ventana, Mexico, doing some kiteboarding and like doing a little bit of work remote and stuff like that. So we had friends in town, so it was good. But it's funny because I have all of my metrics from 2022, and I'm like kind of antsy to do a look back. But I was intentionally trying to like you know take a break, and I'm kind of like, okay, but I actually like, I set goals and I want to see if I hit them, and like I kind of
Mhm.
want to do a look back. So it was good, but things have settled down now. So I'll probably spend some time this weekend taking a look back at kind of what worked, what didn't, what I want to double down on, what I want to kind of take a break from, those kinds of things. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it was good.
Invest in what works. Yeah, I forced myself to take 2 days off because I'm always in front of the computer, or four
Yeah.
days off. And by the fourth day, I started getting real itchy. And I was like, I don't know if I could like quote unquote retire
Yeah.
because I just like what would I do with all my time? And I just kind of love this stuff anyways. And the day
Yeah.
goes by so quick. You're like, all
Yeah.
right, it's 8. What happened to the day? So you got to be careful with it because
Yeah.
like a decade, it's like the decades are short, but the days are long.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you. That whole read a book on the beach, I can only do that for like a day. And then I'm like, okay, what are we doing?
Yeah,
So
what's next? Yeah, you start getting
exactly.
itchy. So, anyways, like as I mentioned in our little email chat, I really have like two major questions I want to get your perspective on. And the first
Yeah.
one is just like your origin story. I want to know like how did you get to here? What's the
Yeah.
background? What's the hero's journey, I want to
Yeah.
hear that, and then I want to talk a little bit business shop, all of that stuff. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about like your journey and everything.
Yeah, my journey. It's funny because in the traditional hero's journey, it's like there's got to be an inciting incident, and then you go through this magical world, right? And you get this mentor.
Yeah.
And at first glance, I always laugh that I'm like the one person who actually majored in marketing and then got a job in marketing and has had a career in marketing. But if we rewind before all that happened, I
Yeah.
did have an inciting incident that I had to go through like a whole magical world with a mentor. So I actually started college as a musical theater major.
Oh, okay.
And I, all through high school, and I knew like I was very focused on performance. I was, competing and doing all of that. But even then, I kind of realized like I don't really have the talent to perform for a living. Like it's a very small percentage of people who can make their living performing. And then I went to college and I actually had my inciting incident. I got nodes on my vocal cords, which is like a medical, it's like calluses on your vocal cords.
Oh
And
no.
it's pretty common for singers. And especially if, you sing a lot and maybe you don't have the best vocal practices. So I had to go on vocal rest. So again, my magical world was being silent for 4 to 6 weeks during the holidays.
Oh
And I
man.
had to use a whiteboard and I couldn't talk. And that obviously gives you a lot of time to, think about your life and your choices and like,
Right.
what am I going to do with this degree? And what if this happens again? And so, long story short, I ended up recovering. I can still sing. I didn't have to have surgery, which is great. But I realized, okay, I knew I didn't really have the talent, but now I definitely know I don't. And I don't want to teach. So like, what the heck am I going to do with this degree? And so I had to go through, the battle in the special world of figuring out what the heck I'm going to do with myself. And so I started going down the path of figuring out like, what am I interested in? What do I like? What kinds of careers are possible with those things?
Yeah.
And basically found marketing and went into my first like marketing 101 class. And I opened the book and it says marketing is about people. And I was like, yep, this is
Ding.
what I'm
Yeah.
doing now. Shut the book. And I was like, I have a major. So it is funny because I don't, on the surface, I don't feel like I went through the hero's journey, but I'm like, oh man, that first semester of college, like,
Yeah.
yep, that was my hero's journey.
Yeah. That's is everything okay with the voice now?
Yeah. So prior to COVID, I was doing 2 or 3 shows a year, community theater, like for
Oh,
free. Yeah. So I actually
nice.
perform all the time. I'm in a show coming up I have rehearsals starting in March, actually. So I'm going to be in the producers, which I'm very excited about. So yeah,
Oh,
I get
that's
to perform all the
amazing.
time now.
Wow. I mean, life is weird. You may end up on or off Broadway or adjacent to. You never know. I mean, life is weird.
I mean, on one hand, yes. On the other hand, I see the talent that I'm up against in my community theater. There's some powerhouses out there. Like again, I am a solid performer. I do, I love what I do. I am fun to watch. I get cast as often as I want at the level that I perform at. But
Yeah,
I'm all the way across the country from Broadway.
that's interesting.
I'm a full country across from Broadway.
Well, there might be, I mean, you're really performing. I mean, marketing's a bit of that, and you've been
That's
running the
true.
podcast circuit. So, we haven't broken into song yet, like, but if, the cast of Frozen pops up in the background, like we're good to go.
We could do it just like Lin-Manuel Miranda pops in from the Blur.
Yeah, yeah. But that's, that inciting incident, it's one of the things I actually worry about because I think about my eyesight, not so much
Yeah.
the voice. And I have a friend who is he's not sighted, right? So his whole life. And so a lot of the conversation I have with him on accessibility is like computing and the content out there,
Yeah.
like just podcasts, right? Like I can hear it, but if I can't see, a lot of the internet was deathly silent for a long, long time. And
Yeah.
so if the screen readers aren't set up correctly and not having your alt tags and everything, it becomes a big deal. So I really like Apple's sort of focus and commitment down that path because I wonder like, man, if my eyesight went, it would be really
Yeah.
hard to do what I do. Or, like folks like us, like the fingers and just the ability to do your day to day that a lot of us take for granted. It's like, it's a big deal. And
Yeah.
speaking too, if we can't speak, I mean, everything is like Zoom calls now. So yeah, well, I'm glad you're healthy and you're safe and you still get to do some of the fun stuff. One other quick question then, did you have a talisman?
A
You're,
talisman.
yeah.
I mean,
Have you ever? What
maybe
is
the
it?
whiteboard
Yeah.
could kind of count as the talisman.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know, man. That was probably like the bag of rocks that I had to like drag along with me, right? Like that was more the obstacle I faced.
Pushing that boulder up the hill like Sisyphus, and
Yeah, like
yeah.
Sisyphusian task. And I'm super extroverted, which is no surprise to literally anyone who sees me do literally anything. And oh man, that whiteboard situation, it was real rough. It was real
Yeah.
rough.
I think I saw Lady Gaga or somebody, one of the performers, musicians had that for a while. I was like, oh, that's rough. That's rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's slower too than you're used to. So did you find it kind of like took your vibration level down a little bit? Or were you still as fast?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with it is that it's not particularly, at least in my case, it wasn't particularly painful. And so
Mhm.
it really it was a mental thing. And I'm trained like, so it wasn't, and in my case, it was quite mild and like, you know, it's not like Julie Andrews where they basically, yeah, poor woman. She had a very severe case in it and had to have surgery and it ruined her cords.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so it's in my case, it was mild and like
Mhm.
the vocal rest solved it, but yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, a lot of performers you're seeing it's much more common now, especially for like touring performers, like pop and some of that, where they're maybe, especially if they haven't had a lot of training,
Yeah.
which I mean, again, I think this dovetails a lot with marketing as well, because the pacing that you speak with, the breathing, the support, like I try to sit up straight. I don't want to be sitting here like this. Like there's so many things with it that once you kind of go through something like that, you're like, oh, it's good to have good posture when you speak and when you're on meetings and not just like, sitting down like this. Right. So it's, it's good to like have your throat relaxed. Like, don't be talking like this, like
Mm.
you can see it sometimes when people speak or sing and their throat is like really tight. And it's just like, no, just let it go. So all
That's
sorts of professional lessons in there too.
No, that's super interesting because I've never even thought about it, but you're so right. Because I mean, as you were talking, I was leaned forward on the desk here, and
Yeah.
you're so right. Like posture is such a big deal, and having that airflow and like the attenuation and everything, it makes a
Yeah.
difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
It's
interesting.
also interesting from a cultural perspective because in the US, we speak in a very like small range of tones,
Hmm.
but it's actually better for you to speak slightly higher. And so then where most of us are trained to speak. And then there's other issues from like a confidence perspective or a gravitas perspective that deeper voices sound more confident and more authoritative.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of women are coached to kind of like lower where
Hmm.
they speak. So I actually sing for soprano, the like really high stuff. But if you meet me, I speak
Down.
lower,
Yeah.
right? So it's this interesting balance where if I start speaking very high, I sound young or I sound less confident. So it's a whole thing, both from a cultural perspective and like a training perspective. Obviously, I don't intend to lower my voice,
Yeah.
but that's what I hear all around me, and so that's kind of just where I settle. So it's a super interesting thing to think about that from a speaking perspective, a marketing perspective, a leadership perspective. Like, how are you showing up? How did you
Right.
come to show up that way, just even from a speaking standpoint? And then if you're doing some other type of discipline, how do you bring that in to other parts of speaking and showing up and walking around, right? Like it's a very interesting thing to think about that both from a vocal standpoint and from a character standpoint. And then when you translate that to marketing and you think about audience empathy and who are they, how do they walk, how do they think, what motivates them, all of that has a lot of overlap.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, there's so much to that because it's like this inherent bias. It's like this weird social animal in us to try to like get on similar vibration levels and even
Yeah.
posture and everything. And I've seen some videos where this was on TikTok. I like do my R&D now on TikTok.
Nice.
So I saw this one gentleman and he was doing different interactions. So it would be him and someone else, either a woman, another man, and it would be simple posture changes, just where I held my hands, where my shoulders were, and if I was a tiny bit in front of or behind a person, and how that was perceived in terms of power dynamics. And I
Yeah.
was like, and then you bring up the point about just the level of your voice and octave. And I've even found this too, because I have a naturally deeper voice, that I'll even speak up higher to be less, I don't know if combative is the right word, but just more open
Right.
to people. And so I'm not a perceived threat. So
Yeah.
it's weird, all these little human, and you try not to have a mask, and it's like, can you ever not? And like the ego is always there, and can you ever really kill it? And you're like, yeah, I killed the ego. And it's like, well, no, that's actually your ego talking. And it's like,
Right.
what do we do? Like, do we just stay in a corner and rock ourselves to sleep? Like,
I think it's funny too, because I obviously go back and like watch and listen to all of the podcast interviews and
yeah.
anything that's recorded where I speak, I watch it. And I noticed that I had an angry neutral face. Like if I was sitting on a panel or if I was sitting in a podcast, I looked like angry. My concentrating face was like, it just looked angry. And I was like, man, I should look more pleasant while I'm listening. And so then the next time I did it, I was like very enthusiastically like, but then I looked dopey. It's like, okay, how do I need to curate a pleasant, neutral, engaged listening face so that if I'm on a panel or if I'm listening on a podcast or something like that, that I don't look like a crazy person. And so I stood in front of the mirror and I was like, and you need just enough, because the other problem is, talking about cues, if I'm too enthusiastic, then you think I want to jump in. And so you stop speaking, right? Like the amount of nodding that you just did, I'm like I'm cognizant of how much I'm talking and how much you're talking. And so if you're too enthusiastic, then I'm like, oh, I should be done speaking so he can speak. But you don't have anything to say. You're just nodding because that's what humans do. And so there's this other interaction where you almost have to curate a different cadence for a podcast conversation or an interview or a panel that you wouldn't do in real life, because that's not how humans work. That's not how conversation works. But this isn't really a conversation. Like we're trying to make it a conversation, but ultimately we have a goal. We have a timeline that we have to stop on.
Yeah.
And so that mirroring is like a separate skill set that you don't realize you need until you hear really great podcasts or really not great podcasts or something in between, right? Like the thing that makes it really interesting is that the host and the guests have struck that right balance.
Yeah. I feel like I need to go take acting class now. I saw this other thing where it was this analysis of Brad Pitt over the years. And in the very beginning, it was like his first headshot. And he just kind of looked like this dopey teenager, like, hey guys. And then by the end, he was gravitas Brad Pitt, international man of mystery, whatever, right? And and then I saw the same thing with Daniel Craig, who played 007. And I wasn't like seeking this stuff out. It just, again, back to TikTok, the R&D channel. But I was like, that's super interesting. It was like teeny tiny, subtle variations just on a face like you described. And that could make the difference. And then I saw this thing that was really interesting in this write-up about Marilyn Monroe. And a reporter had gone out on the street with her in New York back, I don't know, in the 50s, whenever it was. And she had like on the baseball hat or whatever, the code, and you couldn't tell who she was. And she said something to him like, do you want to see it? And he was like, what? And she was like, I can turn it on. And nobody had noticed her. Nobody paid attention. It's like being in the street in New York. Like nobody notices anybody, right? And then something happened. And he couldn't pinpoint what it was or what she did. And all of a sudden, she became Marilyn Monroe, and everyone came. Nothing about her appearance changed. Nothing about the way she walked changed. It was something in her vibration state that changed. And all of a sudden, everyone felt it and noticed it. And it's like so powerful. And what is that? And like, I have friends that did Second City in Chicago, and another chap who I've known a long time who's trying to get into the improv state. And it's a whole thing that I don't have, because I was like a math guy. Like, let's go into like a back room in a dark cave and like pound on the just calculator. And it's like, what is all this stuff? So this is, I mean, yeah, I feel like I need to go read some books or something now.
Yeah, the psychology piece of it, it's interesting. You know, some of the tricks, like you see it with sales, that if you say someone's name, they react to that. People like to hear their name. Mirroring, where like, okay, if you lean forward, then like I'm going to lean forward. If I lean back, then you lean back. So there's a formula, but if you do it as a formula, people pick it up.
Yeah.
So like I talk about this a lot, where people, when I say like, you have to genuinely care about your audience, you have to genuinely love them as whole humans. I can't tell you how to do that. I can tell you how to write better content. I can tell you how to be a better speaker. I can tell you how to find new ideas, but I cannot tell you how to genuinely love your audience.
Yeah.
And for them to feel that from you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's super interesting because yes, there's an element of training it, but I feel like it's almost training yourself as well to genuinely have that energy or those feelings or that mindset about something, because I've seen it, and people who are really close to me can see it, where in my mind I'm like, oh, I did the same performance, right? I did the same talk. And some people are like, man, you were on today. And I'm just like, I didn't feel like, what did I do differently? And they can't tell me what I did differently, just that I was on.
Yeah.
It was great, right? So it's a really interesting thing. Sometimes I can pinpoint if something is off.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can pinpoint like, man, that one was really good. But that middle ground where other people feel like it was really good and I can't pinpoint why, that's the piece where I'm like, how do we bottle that thing?
Yeah.
You know? It's,
I mean, maybe that's a good segue, because we got like 7-8 minutes left into, do you think that genuine curiosity, it's like Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which at the core of that is just like genuine curiosity and interest, fascination, and from that, everything.
Yeah.
So like the main question is like, have you found things over your career, being in marketing for so long, being like, I'll just say stage trained performer, where you've found something that really does allow like genuine human connection? And I guess if there is genuine human connection, and it's real and it's true, have you found like, if you can merge that into a product or a service or a feeling, that is the thing that ultimately like helps capture that engagement or that retention? Or is it something else? Or is it completely wildly all over the map and no one knows, and that's why we have jobs?
I think it's a little bit of both. One thing that I've found, I agree that it is an element of curiosity, but there's a fine line between being curious and interrogating someone. And I think there's also a fine line between like having their best interest at heart to guide them and manipulating them.
Yeah.
And that fine line, like part of the reason that I was so interested in marketing when I first started, I was like, I just love to like dig around in people's brains and figure out what makes them tick and then use that.
Yeah.
And my husband was like, so you want to manipulate people? And I was like, what? No, that's not what I want to do. But
yeah,
it can come across that way, that marketing is manipulative. And I've been in situations, this is something that has worked well for me, of kind of like being a handler or being almost like the ghostwriter, the voice behind a person. And several people have commented, they're like, how do you do that? Like, how do you handle them? And I'm like, I mean, I listen to them and I watch them and I do that. And then I do that thing. And it's the same thing, that sense of mirroring with your audience. When you talk about, so I market to developers, and handily, I am married to a developer. So I kind of joke, I'm like, I need to write a post that's like, I married my audience and you should too, right? But
that's amazing.
that ability to see someone who happens to be in my target audience as a whole human, when you start talking about mirroring the language or digging into someone's head, it's like, it can't just be a surface level archaeological dig, right? You can't go to the museum and understand the dinosaurs the way that the archaeologists who dug around and found the bones and pieced it all together. Or, there's a whole discipline for understanding at a deep level other civilizations or species or whatever it is, right? And I think that as marketers, we have to genuinely be in that community or with those people. We have to internalize that. It can't just be, oh, I hung out on some forums and I picked up some of the lingo. Like, people can tell if you're using the lingo because you read about it or because you actually know what the lingo is, right? So I almost think it's that willingness to embody, even if it's only for a moment in a conversation, right? Like, I didn't come in here thinking we were going to talk about vocal performance and mirroring and all of these things, right? But I have enough knowledge and enough passion about that topic that I can mirror that back to you, and you can mirror that back to me. Like, we're both coming to this with a willingness to be in this space fully and together. Yeah. And not in like a woo-woo way, not in a like trust circle kind of way, but like, oh, we're not sharing our deepest, darkest secrets. But like, if you approach it with that openness to be in this and embody whatever it is that we're doing here, that I think does resonate, and people can feel it. People can feel if you're acting. And again, that's the thing that I don't know how to bottle. Like, how do you not act? I don't know.
The word that comes to mind and has for a long time is method acting. It's like you have to become the user almost, in order to truly understand what it's like. It's like the old writers, right? It's like, you got to go live life before you can write about it. And like, use the pain, use the joy, like, because it's so rich. Like, life is so rich, as they say.
Yeah. I think your point about becoming the user and doing that not from a marketing standpoint, because I think sometimes marketers, we drink our own Kool-Aid. We're like, our product is the best ever. We have this awesome new feature. And it's like, no, but have you tried to use the feature genuinely? Because like,
it's hard to get there.
Some features are not good, and you do have to be willing to go try a competitor's product and come away with, man, this experience was actually really amazing. Mm-hmm. Here's why I still think that our product is superior, but like, we got a gap and we need to solve that gap. I understand why people are, coming from a software as a service, why people are churning or where they're churning to. What over there is attractive to those people? Let me genuinely go look at that as if I am, willing to make a switch, right? I think that again, that line of balancing between genuinely going and doing, a teardown of your own product to improve for the users versus to make yourself feel better that you're superior as a product or a company. It's a fine line, and it bodes well for the user if you can approach it with an open mind to improve their experience.
I agree. It's the 360 view. It's a total experience. Yeah. Just so happens to be behind a sheet of glass right now, but probably not for much longer.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this has flown by. This has been amazing. So thank you so much, Ashley, for stopping by. And I have work to do now. I need to go.
I know. I've assigned you homework. You have to go read some Stanislavski and go check out, some Second City improv classes.
I think it might be in my future in 2023.
I like this journey for you.
Well,
your
beautiful.
Own hero's journey.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. It's been such an honor and such a pleasure having you on today and getting to know you a little bit better. And so thank you for sharing your passion, your joy, and a bit of your background today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, here's to a great 2023. I think good things are in store for us all.
Indeed.
All right, great. Well, I'll shoot this to you and we can have a look at whatever, and
Okay.
we need to make edits, we can do that. And if not, no worries. And then we'll push it out there and
Cool.
be pretty easy.
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds like a good plan. Good way to kick off the new year.
There it is. All right, Ashley, thanks so
Awesome.
much.
Thanks, Sean.
All right,
Bye.
bye.